Welcome to Sustainable Futures with Daniela Bas on the first and the third Saturday every month at 10 a.m. Czech time. Join me for in-depth conversations, exclusive interviews and strategic insights with industry leaders, policymakers and innovators shaping our future. We'll explore how integrating social fairness enhances business and impacts sectors like fashion, food, tech, tourism, sports, and more towards sustainable social change. Every organization gets stronger by challenging itself, so do we. I know it from my own life experience as a woman with a disability who understands the power of resilience, communication, and of thinking out of the box, and as a female executive leader at global level on social sustainability and inclusion. Be inspired, learn, and gain insights. Tune in, think different, and act with purpose. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in whichever part of the world you are. In this episode, I'm joined by Anders Lindberg to converse about the power of fairness and inclusion to have a business success and much more than that. Hello, Anders.
Hello, Daniela.
What's the weather like in Sweden today?
Oh, it's fairly good, but we have moved from late summer to nearly early winter in 1 week's time. So it's fairly chilly in the morning time, but it's crisp and nice still.
Something similar in Italy, at least in the northern part of Italy. In any case, listen, Anders, in this episode, I would like to tell our audience that I'm sitting down with a visionary business strategist, you, who has remarkable career spans of something like 35 years. And dear audience, please do know that Anders include in his career also special skills in terms of transformative leadership of JKL in Sweden. This was until not long ago, and now he is a founder of Tilia, and then the name is very long in Swedish, so I would like you, Anders, to say it with a proper accent.
Well, it's very simple. Tilia.
Oh, so we stay there. Tilia, okay.
Yeah.
And I do know that you continue to navigate really complex business landscapes, providing elite strategic advisory and investment management services. I wish I had those skills. Now, from your role as advisor to the political leaders of Albania and Romania, and you have also been colleague for something like 16 years with the long-standing Prime Minister of Sweden, and I know that together you had and came out with game-changing insights. So let's tune in for today's episode and have this masterclass of corporate strategic governance and advisory leadership. Now, for those who are listening in us in Spotify, so they can't see us, or those who might have a low vision, for the benefit of knowing how I look like today, short hair, and I'm dressed all in pink, and I'm wearing my usual purple violet glasses. At least that's the frame. And what about you, Anders? Can you describe yourself, besides being a very handsome man from Sweden?
Well, thank you. That's the Italian charm. Well, I'm fairly traditionally business dressed, outfit, and actually a kind of orange tie. So a classic guy today.
All right. So, fair finance, we know, is a cornerstone of any thriving business and successful company. So, by adopting transparent practices, companies can really build trust and attract valuable investment. And those that prioritize fairness and inclusion often find themselves on the path to long-term success, as diverse perspectives spark innovation, in my view, and also strengthen resilience. So while effective and strong governance establishes a foundation for ethical business strategies, ensuring that the values one has align with his or her goals, well, this alignment paired with commitment to inclusion is really vital for driving sustainable growth. This is my thinking, Anders. But I would like to ask you, given your extensive experience, as I mentioned to our audience earlier on, what specific strategies do you recommend for business aiming to foster a culture of inclusion and sustainability within their operations?
Well, thank you, Daniela. And just to give a little bit of a caveat before I start talking, that I have built my career on being an advisor, being a strategist, which means I'm not going to sing the gospel here today. I'm going to offer some perhaps critical aspects of these matters. You can paraphrase it, how to make sustainability sustainable. And I think in order to do that, I think we have to start from a basic and make it very fundamental, and then we can take it from that principle. Just as you have a principle of grammar when you learn a foreign language, we can see what kind of exceptions do we have from that basic principle. And I would then just like to start by saying that the most social thing a company can do is to make a profit. That is why we have companies in this world. Because by making a profit, you have the ultimate proof that you're producing something that people are willing to buy for, that you have been able to attract people who are willing to work for you, that you have been willing to attract capital so that you have owners or you have lenders who are willing to support you, and you're able to buy things so you can produce things. And by making it that simplistic, I want to a little bit then take that in the contrast to what is the role of politics, or let's call it government. I think we are very happy that government and politics is not run by businessmen. I don't think that we would have a better world if we would have the Elon Musks of this world to run our countries. Politics has another rationale than business. Sometimes they meet, sometimes they have opposing opinions, and legitimately so. So, by answering your question, Daniela, I think we have to start by saying, in your definition, is inclusion and sustainability, is that profitable or not?
Is it a question you're asking me?
Well, I'm just...
Or is this a rhetorical question?
It's a rhetorical question, and my answer to that would be, is in some cases, I would say in many cases, it is profitable. In other cases, it is perhaps not profitable. And then we have a conflict of interest, or we have a conflict of rationales that have to be solved. So I would start by a little bit. We have that expression in my country here in Northern Europe. You probably don't have it in Italy. And that is, so if you allow me to swear in the church, I think we have to, in order to foster inclusion and sustainability, we also have to accept that this is not always simple. There are complex decisions, and there are also different perspectives to be met. And I think sometimes that's why I use the word gospel. Sometimes it is made, not by you, Daniela, but by others. It's made that this is an evident thing. You just do it and everybody will be happy. It will not cost anyone anything. So now, when we have lived with sustainability discussions for quite a long time, I think it's time to bring it to a new level of, let's call it, pragmatism.
Well, indeed, it has to be transformed into something that can be applicable, otherwise can't be sustainable. Doesn't matter whatever definition we want to give it. And I agree. It's very difficult to merge sometimes the profit with the so-called inclusion, social justice, etc., and politics. So let me ask you a question here, again, based on your experience. What's one surprising lesson then you have learned about fairness in corporate governance that could inspire businesses to adopt more sustainable practices?
I'm not going to be awkward here, Daniela. I want, of course, to be a very grateful guest in your program. But I think one way of answering your question is that the best solutions are perhaps found and the best consequences are achieved when the self-interest of the company coincides with the social ambitions of the society around you. And let us move back only a generation ago, when basically not only all companies but also all organizations in the world were basically run by men, and then we have had a social movement that has taken various aspects, so that today it is more or less self-evident that if the company, if we take that as an example, but that goes also for authorities, has a wider talent pool to choose from, then of course you get better leaders, you get a better company, and ultimately you make more profit. I think we also have the same kind of situation in many of our European countries, where until fairly recently all the leading positions in the structures were held by the indigenous people, the Italians or the Swedes, whereas the newcomers were a little bit left out. And now we have basically the same kind of movement, with a combination of public opinion and legislation and activism that shows that, wow, if we have an even bigger talent pool to choose from, our company will become more successful.
Yes, indeed. So, in this kind of landscape that you have described, where profit, I would say, frequently overshadows ethical considerations, how can companies, in your view, rethink their policies? Sorry, I go back there to prioritize the social sustainability and equity. And additionally, what role do you envision Tilia, your company, playing in challenging conventional investment practices to drive this transformation, if it is of any interest, of course, of the company?
Well, I think if I talk for the world's advisors, we are there to try to understand what are the trends, what are happening, but also a little bit to warn our clients for not embracing the trends too much and without having given it a second thought.
Hmm.
So I think I was playing a little bit with the words. I think sometimes when you talk about inclusion and sustainability, you can just as well change those words to common sense and Christianity, meaning that it's basically, in many cases, basically common sense to act according to what the people who like sustainability or inclusion would like to achieve. And secondly, we don't have to call it Christianity it's a narrow remark, but it's basically some sort of ethical system that you put on top of things.
Hmm.
So my advice is, of course, see if you can find a meeting point between the self-interest of a company and the social ambitions of sustainability movements or inclusion movements. If you cannot find them, and sometimes you will not be able to find them, then you have to be open and say, here we have a cost. Here we have a
Yes.
cost. And then you can ask yourself, or someone can ask themselves, three questions. Are the customers of that company willing to take on that cost? Meaning paying more for the products. Are the owners willing to take less of a profit, which means that the pensioner somewhere taking less of a pension for the company presenting less of a profit? Or thirdly, does the government have to move in and say, here we have a conflict of interest, we need a legislation, we need someone to say, this is the way it's going to be done. And I think we should be more open that sometimes we have conflicts of interest. Sometimes there is a bill to be paid that is not evident where that is going to end up. And then we have to discuss that clearly, open-eyed, and realize that this is a constructive conflict of interest.
Indeed. And do you envision Tilia playing some kind of role in these challenging conventional investment practices?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm just a small fly on the wall, trying to look out on this immense landscape that is the business and political world. I think it's very good that we have companies that are very listening. They try to understand social trends. Sometimes they find themselves in a position where they are too political, because they have taken on sustainability in a way that perhaps the investors in those companies have not given the mandate for. We saw that now 2 years ago, when many of the institutional owners found out that they had policies saying we cannot invest in defense companies, because that was not according to their sustainability policies, meaning that if that would be the norm, Europe or could not defend themselves, or US could not defend themselves. So I always preach a little bit of caution when it comes to companies being too political or trying to embrace what is the haute couture of the policy at the moment. And that's why I started by saying, just like in golf, look at the ball. When it comes to business, always remind yourself that you're there to make a profit. That's why you were invented.
Well, companies are many kinds of companies. Airlines can be a company, food production is a company, tourism is a company, sport is a company, fashion is a company, right? It's a big kind of industry. And I know that you are also interested in somehow in tourism. And that's a big company. So when it comes to sustainability from the climate perspective, environmental perspective, business perspective, social perspective, meaning tourism, for instance, to be inclusive, shouldn't have ideally any architectural or cultural barriers, right? So that's another kind of thinking that one can play when it comes to corporate governance and internal policies of that company, to evaluate whether a teeny bit more investment to promote inclusion and equity is worth, because it opens up to a much bigger niche of potential tourists or not. So there are many angles in my view, but I like this conversation. So let's think a teeny bit about the past. Usually, in the second part of this conversation, I ask my guests one question about the past, present, and then the future. After all, the title of this podcast is Conversation on Sustainable Futures. But let's start from the past. We need to know where our roots are. So, once upon a time, by looking back at the past, what was a pivotal moment or decision during your time during JKL in Sweden that you believe set a precedent for future business strategies, particularly in terms of sustainability and corporate governance? Any examples or moments?
Yes, I have a small story here that took place about 11, 12 years ago. My son was graduating from high school gymnasium, and he was supposed to have a gap year. And I called some of my friends at high levels in the company and said, can you arrange an internship for my son? And then this guy said yes, but nothing happened. And then I said to myself, if I, who is fairly well connected in this society, if I cannot arrange an internship for my son, what the problem is it then for everybody else, or for very, very many more than that?
Yeah.
And that experience led to me, as a social entrepreneur, create a program financed by the government, run by the private business, operated by the Swedish Engineering Academy, that now, after 12 years, is still operating a program in which thousands of graduates every year can go out and have an internship in a company within the technical field for 6 months. They get a salary for that, and they come back being being motivated to study engineering and come back with an engineering background. This was not aimed to be a equality kind of project between men and women, but it turned out to be. It turned out to be, because this turned out to be a key which was lacking before, which made women more reluctant to go into engineering studies because they thought it was nothing for them. But after having done an internship, now they are there.
Wow, this is a beautiful decision you took together with others that support. It was a team effort at the end, but you came up with this idea.
Yeah.
Kudos. Now, currently, let's move to the present time. You have done so many other things since this moment you just shared with us. Beautiful one. What do you think are the most important issues related to fairness and inclusion in business strategies? And again, if you see that Tilia can help clients tackle some of these challenges.
I have to reiterate what I said. I think the most important advice is never forget why you are there. What is your basic mission? Mm-hmm. Be open to embrace social trends and try to do it to make a difference, but don't make yourself a political entity, because that will not be good for business and it will not be good for politics.
Sharp, clear, beautiful formula. So let's dream it a bit now. Let's imagine that you were 20 years old, but project yourself in the year 2071. So what kind of future, Anders, would you hope to see unfold? And how do you think your personal or professional efforts with your new company will have contributed to bring that vision to life in a sustainable future, but for the generations to come? So imagine you are 20 in the year 2071.
Well, I started my company when I was 25, so I took the destiny in my hands from an early age, and I'm very happy with what I have done and the kind of environment I have found myself in and the kind of advice I have been given or I've been having the opportunity to give. I'm at heart an optimist. I think the world is a better place today than it was when I was 20. I think although we see lots of negative headlines about this and that, I think we are slowly, gradually still moving to a better place. And one of the reasons why we are doing that is that we have a free flow of ideas. We can share knowledge more easily. We can steal with pride from good examples everywhere. So in that way, I will actually end this session by singing in the gospel, meaning I am singing the gospel in a way that, yes, I believe in a brighter and better future.
Well, so with this gospel, we are almost at the end of this beautiful conversation. Let me share with our audience something personal about you. I know that this morning you have been playing tennis. So what's next on your agenda once we bid adieu for today?
Well, I'm sorry to be bragging, but in order to answer you correctly, I have to brag a little bit. I'm going to attend a dinner with the Swedish king tonight.
Chapeau. So it's a beautiful, beautiful way of saying adieu for today. So I really thank you a lot. It has been a great conversation. And you know that I estimate you and appreciate you a lot for your career, but also as a human being. I had the privilege to get to know you a teeny bit better, a teeny bit longer. So thank you very much. And hopefully we'll catch up another time for a real masterclass, if you agree, and if you have the time to do that. Thank you, Anders.
Super. Thank you, Daniela.
Ciao. As I wrap up this episode, my heartfelt gratitude to today's guest and to all of you. Join me for the next episode as we delve deeper with special guests, uncovering thought-provoking insights and actionable steps, paving the way for a brighter, inclusive, sustainable tomorrow. Thanks also to Damian Morton, music, and Maria Cortez Gagliano, social media. Don't miss out next episode on shaping the future we aspire to. Ciao, ciao!